Hi, I'm Nick Redding. I'm the president and CEO of Preservation Maryland. And as we approach the end of the year, we wanted to have a conversation with our board chair, Tom Spencer, who I'm here with, about not only where we've been as an organization in this past year, but also during his tenure here on the board of directors of Preservation Maryland, and also a look at where we're headed and what excites all of us about the future and the promise of preservation. It's been a big year, given the fact that we've all been living through a really challenging period of time. We've kept the organization not only afloat, but we've really taken on and tackled some pretty big and exciting challenges. You've been with the organization for some period of time on the board and as our board chair now. Of all that we've tackled this past year, what speaks most to you? What excites you, and what gives you really hope for where we're headed?
The accomplishment that I'm the proudest of this year is our purchase and restoration of our log house on Jonathan Street in Hagerstown. In fact, I think it is the most exciting, worthwhile project that we've undertaken during my tenure on the board. Like a lot of things that we have done, this accomplishes more than one goal. It saves an historic house, and it will serve as a catalyst to revitalize an underserved community in a city in Maryland. So I'm just in love with the project. I hope we can do more things like that.
Yeah, and I think, people should know too that there were big conversations within the organization about whether or not we could tackle something like this, and really it came down to our donors and supporters made it possible. We couldn't have done it, and we kind of went out on a limb, and you and I know that the board was a little worried about taking on something this big, but the generosity of the donors really has made this possible, and it's given us, I think, the confidence now that we did one and we can do more. And so we have more planned now. And I think the board has a sort of a sense, and our membership does too, that we really can do these big challenging things, which we haven't done in a long time.
And these future projects that are on the horizon, like Jonathan Street, will also accomplish more than one goal. Climate change and historic preservation go very nicely together, for example.
Yeah, and as Tom's alluding to, we have a project that we're going to be working on in earnest in 2022 on City Dock in Annapolis, where we're going to be elevating one of the last remaining waterman's cottage down there right at the very edge of City Dock, almost 9 feet in the air, to elevate it out of the impact of sea level rise. And sea level rise is something that we know is happening, but obviously here in Maryland, just in the past couple months, we saw that humongous flooding down on City Dock. The Burtis House, which we're going to be working on, took over like 1.5 feet of water in that. So this is not a theoretical thing. And I think our property work puts us sort of at the center of these really important conversations, and shows that preservation isn't just something that saves historic places, but it's a tool for solving big problems.
Yes, and the combination of climate change and preservation obviously resonates with people. During the time of the horrific floods in Ellicott City, we were able to raise money totally online that greatly exceeded our expectations because people recognized the importance of the project, and we accomplished a lot in Ellicott City.
So not only are we tackling projects in Hagerstown with our log cabin rehab, and then of course City Dock in Annapolis, but you've mentioned before the work that we've done in Ellicott City and how that really is integral to the story of climate change. And we're working with Howard County on a potential project that will take place in 2022, which is looking at the rehab and reuse of the old Ellicott City Jail, which dates back to the 1850s.
Yes.
This big granite structure, and the potential for maybe even building out a center that looks at the intersection of climate change and heritage, and how heritage can be used. Reusing buildings can help with climate change, but also how to make sure that we can save historic places. And I know that's sort of part and parcel to all the things that excite you. So
It is.
I don't know what you think about where we're headed with the Ellicott City Jail.
Well, I just hope it moves forward. I hope we get the support to realize this dream. It's one of the most sophisticated projects we've ever undertaken. I think we're up to it, and I hope we can make it work.
Yeah, it's going to be an expensive one, but it's going to be so important for us to be able to have a place to talk about that. And what better place to talk about the intersection of climate and heritage than the poster child for how these issues can come together, but also how we can solve them too.
Yes.
Right? Like in Ellicott City, what I've said before is if we can't solve it in Ellicott City, then there's a lot of other places that can't solve it either. And so we have to get it right. And I think it's a really great opportunity. Howard County has been very supportive. The state has been supportive. It's going to be a multi-million-dollar project. But not only does it speak to all of that, but there's some really difficult history on site. There were lynchings on site, and we want to be able to talk about that in a way that's contemplative and really allows us to sort of engage with these difficult topics and stories and make sure that we're doing it in a way that respects the history. And so there's a lot of opportunities on this site for us to show how preservation can be used to solve big challenges.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think the thing that as an organization we really try and focus on is not only, like you say, how do you do a project and have multiple different outcomes and purposes and goals. So it's not just saving historic buildings, but how do you use historic places to help solve and address big challenges in society? And how do you make life better for Marylanders by using historic buildings and historic places? The other big thing that we've done, obviously we've been talking about property redevelopment and actually the brick and mortar work, but our partnership with the National Park Service has really taken off in the past year. We now have 3 full-time dedicated employees to this program. We're going to be recruiting dozens of young adults and recent veterans in the year ahead. I mean, workforce development is something that we've jumped into in a way that the organization's never really touched it before.
And yet another example of 2 different worthwhile goals. Preservation of historic properties in national parks, and providing employment, skilled job positions for a great number of people.
Yeah. And what we also found over the past year, too, is that the pandemic gave us a bit of a pause when it came to workforce development. Unfortunately, we weren't able to put as many people in the field. So that gave us a moment to stop and think, well, what are the systemic barriers to this kind of work and to training people? And we realized, well, forever, basically in the United States, we haven't had registered apprenticeships for a lot of these historic trades. And just in a month or so, we're going to be putting in our first application to the U.S. Department of Labor for sort of a catch-all, the first one, which is preservation maintenance, which is helping people learn how to take care of a historic building and be able to respect the fabric and take care of things and basically keep problems from happening,
Yes.
Preventing backlogs.
Yes.
But that opportunity and sort of the silver lining of the pandemic of not being able to recruit as much has been putting us sort of at the center of this conversation about knocking down systemic barriers. And I think the exciting thing is that as a statewide, we're having national impact and influence all across the country because of our location and because of our partnership with the Park Service.
Yes. Yes. It's part of, I think, a trend that's been going on in Preservation Maryland and around the country for quite some time, and that is the democratization and the increased pragmatism of historic preservation. It's not just about house museums anymore. It's about so much more. It's about historic districts that increase property values and Main Street programs that help local businesses. So you're right, we're doing a lot and we have a lot more to do.
Right, we've got federal legislation, we've got state legislation. In the year ahead, we're going to be working to increase funding for the state historic tax credit, which is a commercial tax credit that really incentivizes these large catalytic type projects, the big warehouse rehabs, the conversions to offices and apartments and affordable housing. And I know tax credits can be a little wonky, a little dry, but they are something that are incredibly important. And I know it's been something you've been passionate about. And now we have the opportunity to greatly increase funding for it.
Well, the general accepted value of historic tax credits is that for every dollar in tax revenue that's lost, it generates $8 in economic activity. It's a no-brainer. It works very, very well, as it has in Maryland and elsewhere. We just need to do it on a bigger scale.
Donor support and year-end support directly supports our advocacy work in Annapolis. We have full-time staff. We've retained a registered lobbyist in Annapolis to really push this work because we know it has a catalytic impact all across the state. Not only does it save historic places, but it makes the business case for preservation. And as you say, the state and local governments make money off of this.
Yes.
If somebody were to offer you $1, or you said, give me $1 and I'll give you 8 in about 5 years, most people would take that. Fortunately, it just requires a little bit of effort on our part to make sure that our legislators in Annapolis take that offer as well.
Yes. And we have a good team in Annapolis helping us. And I should say at this point, up and down the line, Nick has recruited and retained a great staff that has been not a bit less productive during the pandemic as it was before. I hope we can continue doing the great job that we've all been doing.
Yeah, and we have a great team and a growing team. In fact, during the pandemic, we've added some positions and have some new programs coming online as well. One that I know you're excited about is a program that we'll be launching in 2022, which is our Save a Grave program, which is our first foray really into youth leadership and youth development around historic preservation. So in a nutshell, the idea is that we're going to train young adults through youth groups, FFA, 4-H, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, on how to maintain a historic cemetery, how to carefully clean a gravestone, and then hopefully get them to adopt a rural sort of abandoned cemetery or a cemetery that needs some help in their community. And the idea is not only to help restore some cemeteries and clean cemeteries, but also to get young adults excited about this work and create yet another pipeline for hopefully workforce development in the future. So
yes.
It connects a lot of dots.
It does.
And it's something we haven't done before, but I know we're excited about it and you are as well.
Yes, definitely. I mean, the primary benefit of this, of course, is that we're going to clean up a whole bunch of cemeteries, but we're also going to enable kids to learn about and become more interested in local history. And as you say, this kind of work can serve as a conduit to, well, I don't want to overstate it, but theoretically a career in historic preservation.
Yeah, I mean, part of the work of doing this kind of thing is to spark interest and excitement. I mean,
Right.
that's sort of what we're trying to do, is to give people and young adults an opportunity to see how exciting and promising this work can be.
Yes.
And fulfilling.
And fun.
Exactly.
I'm sure this will catch on, and I think it will be great.
Yeah, and so part of our Giving Tuesday campaign was focused around that, and obviously support of donors at year end makes this and all of these types of projects and programs possible. And I should also mention that, not only are we tackling these ambitious property development projects, launching workforce development campaigns with the National Park Service, but we're still providing the core operating programs that are so necessary to the work that we do, providing over $100,000 a year in grants to projects all across the state, providing outreach and education around preservation, producing a weekly podcast, and then also our whole Smart Growth campaign, where we're invested and engaged in comprehensive planning around the way that the state develops. and saving ag lands so that we can invest in communities. So from actual brick and mortar to training people to planning to the funding that makes it possible, no matter what you care about when it comes to preservation, we probably have a piece for you.
That's right. Smart growth just feeds in to restoration rather than demolition. Both goals of Preservation Maryland, and I'm proud to be a part of them.
So it's been wonderful being able to sit here with Tom in this beautiful historic home here in Baltimore County and have the opportunity not only to talk with him about where we've been, but really about where we're headed. And donor support is the difference between our ability to do these projects and these projects not happening. And so we're greatly appreciative of all the support that our donors have provided that have gotten us to this point, and we hope that we can count on you for your support as we approach the year end and this critical time of giving to make these projects possible and to invest in the promise of preservation. Thank you so much for having us here today, Tom.
Thank you for coming.